Hi, I'm Quincy, and welcome to Katie's podcast. We will be talking, I think, about audio today, because that's one of the things I'm into. I'm
And
Katie's friend.
I don't, yeah,
Oh, no,
you can continue.
it's still an introduction, Katie, actually. This is the Quincy Delp Show. I'm Katie's friend because she went to school next door to my house, and my friends became friends with her, and now I became friends with her.
There we go. So,
Now tell us what we're about to do.
okay. Thank you for establishing that. So I don't know anything about audio stuff. I'm not an audio person. I'm a visual person. So Quincy seemed like the perfect person to educate me during 10 minutes about all things audio and music and technology.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know anything when it comes to audio in terms of like speaker recommendations. That is not my thing. But I do like digital sound, which is how computers think about audio. And I like thinking about it in terms of large scale stuff like notes and chord progressions, and small scale stuff like quality of tone and timbre and all that. So I don't know. What do you like? What do you have questions? Like, do you just want an overview? Like, what are you curious about?
So I guess my first question is, how do you get from zeros and ones to sound? And how do you get from sound to complicated music?
Okay, so if we're starting from zeros and ones, that can a bit can be one of two things, right? Zero or one. Now, if you want to have like something that's more complicated than just zero or one, you can like use multiple bits to represent one thing. And so that's how, an integer is represented as 16 bits.
Okay.
And an integer can be, within a range, right? With 16 bits, you can get, something like 64,000 different combinations rather than just two. So already we've gone from ones and zeros to like any real number, right? Now, sound is like, when we think of sound, we think of a sound wave, right? And a sound wave, let's see, we don't care about. Okay, so it's basically what computers, to keep track of a sound wave, computers measure it at certain times and remember that measurement.
Okay.
And so each measurement is an integer.
Right.
It measures it really frequently because sound waves go up and down quite often, right? People talk about the frequency of a sound. That's related to its pitch. And frequencies, the human ear can hear frequencies up to like 22,000 hertz, right? 22,000 up and downs per second. And so computers have to sample really quickly. And so frequently when you hear like people talk about sample rates, which is how often the computer takes a measurement, it's like 44K or 48K, 48,000 times a second.
Oh my God.
The computer takes a snapshot of the sound wave and remembers that number. And so basically, if you were to think of that as like a list of numbers, that's essentially an amplitude that you could plot. Like, so if you think of an X and Y axis, you plot the amplitude, and which sample it is the time that's elapsed, right? And so you can reconstruct that sound wave. From here, you can kind of go two different routes. You can think about, okay, how do we collect samples, right? How does a microphone work? And in doing that, we would also learn how a speaker works. Or you can talk about, what does that sound wave mean? Or like, what information can you get from a sound wave?
Right.
I don't know which way you want to go. We could go very briefly on both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for,
okay.
like, I'm also putting you on the spot. We did no preparation work. So this is like incredible that you're just spitting this off super clearly.
Hopefully it's at least clear enough so people can like scroll back and hear it 10 times.
Give me a minute on microphones and give me a minute on what it means to collect information from a wave and what we can get from it.
Well, I have a timer. I don't have a timer, so you're gonna have to stop me. But microphones, basically, okay, we're going to start from very simple again. When you take current and run it through a coil of wire, that creates a magnetic field.
Okay.
And similarly, when you take a magnet and, or rather, when you change the magnetic field around a coil of wire, that can create current. It's the opposite thing.
Right.
And so one way to change the magnetic field is by like moving a magnet around. And so what a very simple microphone has is it has a diaphragm, like think of it like a piece of paper, and it has a magnet attached to that. And then the magnet, okay, so imaginary piece of paper, magnet sticks out the back of it.
Right.
And then, not to get too graphic, the magnet sits in a coil of wires.
Okay.
So when the real life sound wave comes by, it's going to vibrate the piece of paper.
Right.
And the magnet's going to go in and out and create a current in the wire.
Okay.
And that is going to that is what the computer is ultimately measuring.
Okay.
Right. And then through the process of like analog, which is the whole continuous real world thing, to digital conversion, that's how the computer samples it, takes those measurements, and gets
awesome.
it.
And so now tell me about what we can get from those measurements.
Yeah. So sound waves are these really low level piece of information. Like if you just look at a sound wave, you're not going to be like, oh, that's this note or this instrument.
Right.
But like we talked about a minute ago, frequencies relate to the pitch that you're hearing. And so if you're to use a computer to analyze the sound wave, you could figure out what pitch is being played. It turns out that every oscillating signal can be broken up into fundamental frequencies. So what that means is if you take a really complicated oscillating signal, you can break it up into a sum of individual, you can think of them like sine waves, if you remember from trigonometry, just a very simple up and down. And so this complicated signal might be some combination of like 440 hertz and 880 hertz, and like, you know, it could not follow any sort of pattern. It could also have like a 1300 hertz in there. And that just creates like a different timbre, right? So the different combinations of frequencies create different qualities of sound. And then what's more is, well, I should say different combinations of frequencies create different timbres. And then different shapes create different qualities of sound. Okay. And I'm going to go past the minute, but this is where we get into really synthesized music. So in the real world, you can't have anything that has like a cusp to it. You can't have something that like dramatically, that has like sharp corners. Everything's smooth, right? It might happen really fast, but everything's smooth. In the synthetic world, you can do whatever the fuck you want. So what does that mean, right? Like, sorry, I don't know if this is like a clean
no, go on.
You can, so rather than take a sine wave, which is all curvy, you can make a triangle wave.
Or
you can make a square wave. Exactly. So you go 1 immediately to 0. And so that creates like fuzzy sounds, or sort of, you know, there's a bunch of different sounds you can get out of it. And that's cool, because that's when you really, like, the ear knows that we're not hearing something natural, right? The ear is very used to what happens in the natural world. That's weird, and you can pick up on it, and that can create a whole new world of sound. The other thing, going away from quality of sound back to that like sum of fundamental frequencies, this is what I feel like I must have talked to you about this before. I talk to all my friends about this. This is like, and if I haven't, then we're now finally true friends, Katie.
Amazing.
Is that, so I guess we'll start rather from a low level, from a high level. It's, if you think about two different, till 10 minutes is up, holy smokes. Okay, if you think about two different instruments playing the same note, sound different. Like you can tell a cello is playing A versus piano playing A. And the A is the same frequency, 440 hertz, but the cello has a different, it's not just playing one frequency. It has other frequencies in it that are created by how the bow is interacting with the string, and how the string is like interacting with the body of the cello and all that stuff. And so those overtones, which are integer multiples of the fundamental frequency, are different varying by instrument, and so that's what gives instruments different timbres. And so
Amazing.
that's how you can extract.
That's incredible. We'll talk more about this
Yeah.
later. I feel like I need to be educated fully about sound now from Professor Quincy. So thank you for being here, and it's good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you too.